Solo leveling is so insanely big, and I don't know why. Sure, the original manhwa has a cult-like following, and many fans of the manhwa would only naturally shift over to the anime adaptation, but it has transcended that. There are so many fans who swear by the anime, people who haven't even seen the original, and I just don't get why. I really just don't. So this video will be of me expressing my personal thoughts and feelings about the show and earnestly asking the questions. Why is it so popular? And is it even that good? If you come to agree with me, come to learn something new, or just enjoy a madman's rambling, leave a like and subscribe. It helps a lot. Also, if you have a genuine answer for my questions, please let me know in the comments. This isn't me just flaming a show. If it's that popular, there must be a reason and I just don't get it yet.
I think it's safe to say that we all already know what the show is. In a world where magic portals to a different dimension start to arise without a known catalyst, a very small subsect of people choose to explore these mysterious places to fight bosses and excavate some important rock. These daredevils are called hunters, and our protagonist, Sung Jin-woo, is cursed with the curse of being the weakest of them all. And unfortunately for him, there is no improvement because in this world, everyone is stuck to their skill levels when they first awaken their abilities. And this was all said in the first episode through shitty exposition dumping. So for me, it started off weak. And also, I don't get why he chooses this career path. Sure, the ceiling is high to how much he can make, but the floor is also very low, and he is perpetually to be stuck on that floor. If you're destined by the gods above to be the single worst at a job forever, I don't know why you would do that. He should just get a job in IT or medical or literally anything else. And it does end up working out for him in the end, but why would he even continue that path without knowing so? Also, another small thing is that he can definitely still work out, get bigger muscles, become more athletic, train in martial arts, and do many other things that would help him in being a hunter. So, unless all of that are out of the question, which it definitely isn't, there's no reason for him to not be doing those. You might be thinking, oh, but you can't improve any of your stats, but the thing is, you can. People still go to school to improve their intelligence. There are benefits to being a veteran. You do get better at it and understand more things the more you do it. There are also people we see in the show training in martial arts, which if you can improve, there's no point in doing. So you can 100% improve certain stats. Just go pick up a dumbbell and your strength stats would go up, so unless there is an otherworldly being stopping any and all types of improvement, which there isn't, I don't know why he can't do this. All he does in the beginning is swing a knife at a goblin, which would definitely be more effective if you get stronger and learn the right technique, but I digress. After Jinwoo goes into the dungeon with a crew, some shit happens, which I will not get started on because I don't want to just get stuck on this stupid plot point. Though I will say one thing. All of the shit that he says using his intellect to figure out the dungeon is either complete bullshit that he has no way of knowing, or the painfully obvious. But the important thing is that he ultimately gets his power. The power is a simple one, to be able to improve his stats through a video game UI. The first thing that I didn't really like is the whole video game thing. It's really typical and has very little depth. He unlocks new skills and improves points in a very linear and quite boring way. Sure, it is satisfying to see the results when he fights a new bigger bad, but the progression in itself, the whole point of the show that is so important that it is even in the name, is frankly lame. One of the things that make it this lame is the bad world building of the world and the system. Firstly, the world is just a pretty lame, I can't believe it's not isekai world. It has some pretty cool stuff and people, but the world itself is kinda flat. It's a world and it has portals. That's it. But the game system thing is also pretty lame. This is because it can do anything and everything. He constantly gets new shit that is really convenient and it doesn't really ever feel like he is in genuine peril. What's cool in a magic system is never what the magic can do, but always what it can't. Seeing the limitations of it and seeing how the main character can get over it is so much more intriguing than just seeing a guy beat shit up. The main character must struggle, which in all fairness, Jinwoo does a fair bit of, but we also need to see organic growth. I want to see his character also grow as his powers do. I don't want to see just some overpowered guy, which is sadly this show. His powers, which are supposed to be shown growing, are more often than not radical shifts and jumps in levels rather than organic growth. Even what is supposed to be character growth isn't really growth. Even that is just a shift or a sudden flip. See, there are two Jinwoos in this show. show. The first one is a typical weak no character pro tag, and the second one is a typical edgy no character OP pro tag. I want to get this out of the way. It is so incredibly dumb that everything changes around him, including his height, hair, and jawline. But even this isn't a natural progression, it's a random shift in his body accompanied by a drastic shift in strength. A much better example of growth in this style is Shangri-La Frontier, where we see Raku get shit on a bunch of times and finally only after endless trial and error does he succeed. That has to do with video games, and it shows video game-like progression, but it feels so much more natural because we see him grind, we see him struggle. For anyone who's played an RPG-style game, you know that the most enjoyable times are around the middle end of the story, where you are definitely strong, but still struggle. When you are too weak, it's boring and lame. But when you are in the post-game and can beat everything with fair ease, it also loses some of that allure. It's the same here. Make him grind. I don't mean doing 2 dungeons and 100 push-ups, I mean really make him work for it. Slow it the fuck down. But, you know, I criticize the show for not showing character growth, but that might be less than fair. They don't even have a character to undergo that said growth. Jinwoo is not a character. He is as bland as it gets. I don't get this trend of making the power fantasy pro tags always just blank canvases. I get wanting to make the character relatable, but there's a problem with that. People, real people, have personalities that aren't just Jinwoo or Kirito. And also, the big shonens that always do well have eccentric characters with outgoing and very defined personalities. Luffy, Goku, Ichigo, Yuji, Senku, I can list forever. But Jinwoo has so little going for him. He has the motive of wanting to help his mom, and that's it. That is the only bit of character we get. I'd even argue that someone like Kazuya from Rent-a-Girlfriend has more of a personality than him. His personality is that he is a whiny bitchy asshole that no one likes, but it's still more than Jinwoo. But most characters in this genre are whiny bitchy assholes that no one likes, so I don't really know if this is necessarily a bad thing for Jinwoo, as I'd much rather have no personality than an infuriating one, but this is definitely not a good thing. The side characters do tend to have more of a character, but they're not fleshed out at all as they play the part of Jinwoo's entourage. They are background characters, which sucks because the main character is nothing as well. And the characters aren't the only things that are nothing. The whole video game shit is just as substanceless. The whole magic system. I briefly mentioned this, but it's so lame. He has a UI and he has stat boosts. The magic isn't really a big part and it's nothing special. Cool, he has a Sombra invis. Cool, he has some other shit, but they don't flow together in a way that's interesting. He has so many tools in his arsenal and still none of them really have any synergy. A huge tip for magic systems is to not only build laterally. Don't constantly find new shit. Don't have a huge pool of different magics. Make the ones you already have deep. Luffy's Gum Gum Fruit is a good example of this. Luffy has a very simple power of being rubber, but he finds so many ways to utilize it differently. Stretching body parts back to gain speed, using it to pump blood faster, compressing it rather than stretching it to make a spring effect, blowing it up like a balloon. And when Haki is introduced, he just reinforces most of his already existing aspects. Gear 4 is the combination of Haki and the compression aspect, and when Gear 5 is introduced, he finally gets a different set of powers after such a long time. And even that, I struggle to call it an entire new ability as it still has to do with his pre-existing powers. Naruto has 2 jutsus, but he figures out ways to make it better. More clones in more creative ways. The Rasengan, reinforcing it with elemental energy, reinforcing it with natural energy. I can go on and on with magic systems like that, but I'll move on. Jinwoo just has a wide variety of things to use in the most simple and most uninteresting ways. He has a cool sword, he has invis, he has stat boost powers, he gets his Arise later on. It's all just really uninteresting in my opinion. What I would have liked to see is a few powers that really get looked into deeper. Another big component of world building that I would like to have seen is to make it realistic. Now obviously portals to different worlds are as far from realistic as it gets. Complete realism is boring. That is stuff like going to work, coming home to your cat, drinking a beer, and going to bed. What I mean is that nothing ever has any consequences. It being a different dimension, and with everything that happens in it staying in it, literally anything can happen. Any big or small thing, and it has zero lasting impact. After a big battle or something of a grand scale, there should be some lasting impacts on the world, but this just doesn't have that. Whether it's the government doing more or less because something specific happens, or monsters leaking and actually doing something, or having the regular civilians change their way of life, I want to see lasting effects. Because as of right now, that is really similar to just boring old Korea. Nothing different from when I used to live there. Sure, there are hunters, but that's such a small part of the world as a whole, and with no lasting impacts from the portals being there, it doesn't feel any less tense and fascinating than just walking down mundane old downtown Korea. The gold standard for world building in anime would be One Piece, and its world is so intriguing because shit actually happens. When something big happens, there are big repercussions. We are kept thinking about what more can exist and what more can happen because of said thing. We are always thinking about how the government would retaliate to the Straw Hats' victories. Now, it doesn't have to be as grand as that. It can be small and subtle because Solo Leveling's world is just a tad bit more realistic with the setting of the world. So, for Solo Leveling, it can be something like people keeping monster weapons to defend themselves, people dressing differently, people actually using the magic stones they are harvesting for new advanced technology, having new jobs for civilians, like, I don't know, a magic stone power plant or something. There are so many ways to show the impacts of the portals, which would be pretty big deals, but as of right now, the only change made to the world is that there is a new single job, and the monsters sometimes leak through, but don't really do much. They could have made it so much better so easily, which is why I'm honestly kind of disappointed here. But, you know, I also have to give this show some credit. It is one of the better power fantasy bullshit anime. I'd even say that it's one of the best. The animation and art are great. They actually give a shit about the fight scenes. The character isn't completely insufferable. He doesn't have a massive entourage consisting of 4 pairs of tits with no personalities. The magic makes some sense. It does things well relative to others. The problem with that is that most others in the genre are so incredibly dogshit that it doesn't take a lot to be better than it. Like, these shows, I swear, they all just have 4 middle to high schoolers just get blackout drunk and go with whatever stupid thing they say first. Imagine if if I was like a god, dude. Like, I just had godly powers and tits. I want tits. Tits, yeah. Tits. I want to fuck my older sister, my mother. I want tits. And I also want tits on, like, big tits on like a child. Well, they're not a child, but they're actually like 1,000 years old. This show, at best, to me, is an average, not too good, not too bad video game isekai wannabe. I think there's certainly its fair share of faults, but also has many cool, tense moments. And let me just say that the cool moments are cool as hell. It's a constant farm of the coolest blank slate ever, doing cool shit and racking up aura points. It's hype as hell too, and I see why it can be fun for so many, but the moment you look deeper, not even necessarily deep, just past the surface level, a lot of things start to fall apart. The magic system, the lack of any world building, the lack of characters. This show doesn't say a lot about society, it's not a deep commentary on some big problem in the world, and I'm not saying that it has to be. There are many shows that are just feel-good, lighthearted, fun shows that require little thinking. Shangri-La Frontier, which I've already mentioned earlier, is just as much of a power fantasy as this one, except that show has world building, characters, interesting motives for the characters, a cool magic system, and so much more. I know that not every show has to have a super deep meaning, but some things are absolutely necessary, and sadly, Solo Leveling lacks a lot of it. So, I'm genuinely confused as to why this show got so much praise. Don't get me wrong, it's cool as hell, many moments are hype and fit to go viral, but it's just not that good. To even have moments that are meaningful and memorable, you need some of these things as prerequisites, but this show just doesn't bother. This show to me is like
junk food. Sure, it's pretty good for the price. I'm sure you can eat better for the price nowadays, but it's relatively cheap. It's relatively good and simple, but it's not worth shitting yourself over. McDonald's and Solo Leveling are not the greatest things to ever exist. You can, pretty much go to most other restaurants and find a meal just as good, if not better. If I ask someone what their favorite food is, they may say a good New York style pizza, or a smash burger, a nice ass medium rare steak, sushi, or whatever else, but if you say McDonald's, I would think, okay, cool, you're free to like whatever, but really? So why are we freaking out over this show? It leaves me so confused. I get Frieren and its hype, I get Dandadan, I don't get this one. When I first saw the announcement, I thought that it would do fairly well. I mean, the art looks cool, but it wouldn't be anything earth-shattering. And yet here we stand today with Solo Leveling as one of the highest praised animes of the year. Anyways, there you have it. My name is NoahBoahCoah. Maybe I'm just really jealous of how cool people like Jinwoo and Ayana Koji are, leading me to trash their show, and thank you for watching.